What's going on, boys and ladies, if you're watching? Welcome. And other, if you identify as an Apache attack helicopter, or if you identify as a bin, I couldn't care less. Today we're watching and reacting to the rise of Xi Jinping. Yes, Premier Xi, the guy that runs China. Dare I say the most powerful man in China? I'd assume so, right? Well, as the world watches tensions escalate, one figure looms larger than ever. Your boy, Xi Jinping. His meteoric rise to power in China has set the stage for a new era of global politics, with some even warning that World War III could be on the horizon. I mean, to be honest, yeah. I mean, these past few days, he kind of mobilized his forces around Taiwan and told them to get ready for war. So North Korea's in the DMZ zone, with South Korea ready to invade, ready for conflicts. There's North Korean troops in Ukraine and South Korean troops in Ukraine on opposing sides, so, you know, kind of speaks for itself. But in today's video, we'll dive deep into Xi Jinping's journey, his impact on international relations and what that means for the future of global peace, and how it will set the stage for the new up-and-coming DLC to life, which is World War III. Let's get into it. I will link the video in the description. This is called The Rise of Xi Jinping Explained by Vox. I don't know if I've watched a video from them before. I more than likely have. But let's see.
These are the 7 most powerful men in China.
Do I know any of them? Your boy. I was going to say where's Jack Ma, but not richest. Powerful.
They represent the top leadership positions of the ruling party, and their identities are revealed
That's why
every
he's not
5
there.
years
He doesn't
at
rule
a
anything.
carefully choreographed political event called the National Congress.
China's Communist Party unveils its new leadership over the next 5 years.
The order of
Damn.
appearance is symbolic. The first person to emerge is the head of the party for the next 5 years. At the most recent event in October 2022, that person was Xi Jinping, China's president for the last 10 years, who
Damn.
walked out in the top spot a historic 3rd time after getting rid of China's president.
Bro's gone out 3 times, man. Oh my god. I mean, as far as I can remember, this guy's been China's leader since like forever, bro.
Term limit that restricted all his predecessors to 2 terms, a signal that he may be planning to stay in power for life.
Yeah,
The world
no
hasn't
shit.
seen a Chinese leader like this since Mao Zedong, the
That's literally the only other Chinese leader that I know, but anyway.
revolutionary founder of the People's Republic of China, whose ruthless dictatorship scarred the Chinese people for generations. Xi has been compared to Mao a lot, and he clearly draws from Mao's playbook. But there's something else that connects these two. When Xi was just a young boy, Mao ruined his life.
You know what? I've never seen a young picture of this guy. Weird, man.
Generations apart, their paths crossed unexpectedly, and a teenage Xi from an elite family in Beijing ended up in exile, condemned to hard labor in the countryside. 50 years later, Xi is one of the most powerful political figures in the world and the only leader since Mao to have unchecked power over China. So, how did he go from being banished in his country to taking complete control of it?
No idea. No clue.
Xi Jinping's connection to Mao formed long before Xi was even born.
What?
It goes back to when a bloody civil war was raging in China. A group of radical communist revolutionaries, including Mao, gained influence over large swaths of mainland China.
It's crazy how big China is and how it's split up into different like areas and stuff, and how they compare to other countries. Like China's massive. Did you know that? I think it's the 2nd or 3rd largest desert in the world that China has. Wait, let me fact check myself. Largest deserts in the world. Antarctica, Sahara. Well, Antarctica is ice, bro. Gobi, what? No, I swear. 5th largest desert. Fair enough. I thought it was the third for some reason. Odd. But yeah, fifth largest desert in the world. Would you believe it? According to worldatlas.com. What about how stuff works? Fifth largest desert in the world. Yeah, okay, cool. 500,000 square miles and 1.3 million square kilometers. Damn. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I didn't know that until recently. But anyway.
And controlled a communist military called
Let's go back a bit.
A group of radical communist revolutionaries, including Mao, gained influence over large swaths of mainland China and controlled a communist military called the Red Army that fought the Nationalist Party ruling the Republic of China at the time. At this point, the communists were losing bad. The bulk of their army was pinned down here, in a communist-controlled region originally established by Mao, now surrounded by nationalist forces.
Not good.
And they were running low on food. So the Red Army decided to launch
Ironic. They were running low on food.
a bold attack to break through the nationalist forces and evacuate the roughly 130,000 communist soldiers and civilians stuck here. On October 16, 1934, they made their move and attacked a weaker part of the enemy line. They broke through, and even though their numbers quickly dropped, with thousands dying and thousands more fleeing to the countryside, around 86,000 stuck together and pushed on.
That's a full-on army.
This was the beginning of a year-long historic retreat called the Long March, the journey to establish a new communist base far from the nationalist forces. Mao, who used to be a military leader, wasn't in charge at this time. He'd insisted on using guerrilla tactics, which had heavily influenced the Red Army earlier in the war, but that approach had fallen out of favor and he was demoted. The Long March changed that. After escaping the siege here, the Red Army continued to suffer relentless attacks by the pursuing Nationalist Army. The military leaders of the march had pushed for a more traditional wartime strategy of direct confrontation rather than Mao's guerrilla tactics.
Eek.
And the result was catastrophic for the Red Army. Less than half of the original escape group survived the first 3 months alone.
Damn.
So it was at this first stopping point where Communist Party leader Zhou Enlai handed military leadership back to Mao. And Mao
Bro got wrecked and said, you know what? You were right, bro. We got destroyed. You can have what remains. What a waste.
picked an endpoint for the march. Here, 800 miles away in rural northern China. But they didn't go straight for it. Mao led the Red Army deep into the mountains where he predicted lighter resistance. And he was right. But the journey was still brutal. It was 9 more months of non-stop marching and fighting along this several thousand-mile route before they ultimately arrived in northern China, where a guerrilla base led by a communist revolutionary named Xi Jinping offered Mao's army refuge, bringing the Long March to an end.
Get in.
That man was Xi Jinping's father.
I was literally going to say, he's his dad. Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping. It's your man's dad.
In the end, fewer than 8,000 of the original marchers survived.
Nah, wait. 8,000 from 86,000. You know what? If he handed him control over in the first place, that wouldn't have... Trust your boys, man. I know guerrilla tactics and all that, and you want to demote him, but needs must.
Even though thousands died on the Long March from starvation, fighting, and disease, Mao's leadership was credited with saving the Red Army from total annihilation.
Get in.
And he became the de facto head of the party as well as the military, entrusted with rebuilding the army to take on the nationalist forces for total control of China.
Wherever and however the Red troops move into battle, they spread the glory of Mao Zedong.
That don't sound
This
like
is a
Mao.
good stopping point in the story to talk about how power in the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, works. Officially, the highest level of authority is a group called the Central Committee, and is responsible for all of the party's major policy decisions.
Okay.
Within the Central Committee is a select group of officials called the Political Bureau, or Politburo. In most communist parties, like that of the former Soviet Union, the Politburo represents the most powerful members of the party besides the General Secretary.
I assume they're like, obviously being in England, we have like Parliament. I'm assuming these are like your secretaries, your cabinet and stuff, essentially.
The Chinese Communist Party has a key distinction that makes it unique. It has one more, even smaller selection of top officials who ultimately had the final say, an elite class of Politburo members called the Politburo Standing Committee. This
Do they have multiple prime ministers, essentially? I'm
group,
guessing.
which includes the General Secretary, holds supreme control over the Central Committee, dictates the will of the party, and is in full control of the Central Military Commission, which
Never mind.
oversees China's defense.
Oh, completely wrong.
Mao's promotion during the Long March landed him here, in the highest position of the military
Damn.
and the Politburo Standing Committee. Even though
Alright.
he was considered the de facto head of the party when the Long March ended in 1935, he officially became head of the party in 1943. With both the party and the military under his control, Mao began to exploit the system to ensure he remained at the top for the rest of his life.
I mean, who wouldn't?
At Mao's first National Congress as the official party leader in 1945, the party introduced a resolution that brought his influence to a whole new level. It unified the party around a single understanding of its history and declared Mao's political ideology, later called Mao Zedong thought or Maoism, as the unquestioned guiding principle of the Chinese Communist Party.
Bro got a whole...
Basically,
Thing
Mao's
named after
ideas
him.
or policy decisions could no longer be challenged by anyone. It was here he unveiled his equivalent at the time of the Politburo Standing Committee, the 4 other top party leaders, all long marchers deeply loyal to Mao.
I was going to say that Zhou and Lai, he got all of them killed. He shouldn't be there. I mean, I get it. You can't do... Wartime's hard. Success isn't guaranteed. But bro got 90% of his group killed off. 85% of them killed off and then said to Mao, yo, come in and clean up my mess. Nice of him to put him on his standing committee. Unless he has any other accolades I don't know about. Well, we'll get into that anyway.
Like Liu Shaoqi and Zhou Enlai, who'd go on to hold some of the most powerful positions in the future government. 4 years later, Mao declared final victory for the communists in the decades-long Chinese Civil War and established a new country,
Sick
the
painting.
People's Republic of China, or PRC.
Mao Zedong, once a lowly party worker, now assumed the stature of the dominant figure in all of Eastern Asia.
But winning a revolution isn't the same as running a country.
Facts.
Because now that you're running a country, there's all these other things you have to do, like deliver the mail and like build a dam and stuff like that. You can't possibly have the party do all these things.
So the party set up a government that would take the policy decisions made
Why not? Surely you're going to run the country. You have an idea of how you're going to do it.
by the Politburo Standing Committee and figure out a way to make them a reality.
And so it evolved to a system where the party would make all the important decisions, and especially the Politburo Standing Committee. Then, as it is today, many of these decisions would go to the State Council. So the State Council is the highest decision-making body on the state side, led by the Premier of China.
The Premier of China, by the way, is almost always a member of the Politburo Standing Committee.
Okay.
One way Mao kept a tight grip on power over the years was by promoting those loyal to him to top positions in the party and government,
It's the best way
whether
to
they
do
had
it.
government experience or not. For example, Zhou Enlai, the former party leader who helped Mao rise to power during the Long March, became China's first premier.
Makes sense.
The advantage of that is that they could never challenge him. The disadvantage of that is they didn't know what they were doing, and so administration suffered, policy outcomes suffered.
I've heard a lot of like Mao and famine and things that relate to like, you know, all the people of China dying at the time and he starved them and this, that, the other. Obviously, I live in the West. But it makes complete sense. If you're putting people in positions of power that don't actually know how to run the country and have no prior experience, what else do you expect?
Long March survivors often became party elites under Mao. Xi Jinping's father, for example, was appointed Secretary General of the State Council. And as the son
Yeah,
of
he looks like him.
a Long Marcher, young Xi was
Obviously.
given the informal title of Princeling.
He looks exactly the same. Bro, he looks... Wait. You look the same, bro. Where's... Yeah, that's a good picture of you. You look exactly the same. Shout out Xi Jinping, man.
Mao succeeded in never giving up his power during his lifetime. His unchecked policies resulted in massive famines and
There
widespread
you go.
persecution that cost between 40 and 80 million lives over a span of decades, and culminated in the disastrous Cultural Revolution, a violent final attempt from Mao to consolidate his power and force loyalty to
80
the practice
million.
of Maoism. The idea was to make himself and his ideas eternal, the way he viewed communist figureheads like Lenin and Marx before him.
I kind of want to look at what the population of China was in 1966, call it. Since the, in 1966. According to Google, the population was 742 million. Call it 750 million. So that's over 10% of the population. Oh my God. Died of starvation. Allegedly or estimated.
Anyone that didn't fall in line with Mao's ideology was publicly humiliated, impoverished, excluded from society, and in many cases, executed.
Oof.
Either at the hands of the army or by a militant youth group obsessed with enforcing Maoism, the Red Guards.
Command and conquer generals, boy.
Even those closest to the dictator weren't safe from his purges during the Cultural Revolution. High-level officials, including members of the Politburo Standing Committee and Long Marchers, were removed from their positions. Liu Shaoqi was denounced as a traitor and died while imprisoned under harsh conditions.
Oh no.
Mao also removed the chief of staff of the army and replaced him with a Maoist, leaving no one left to oppose him in the military. Mao's handpicks.
Hey man, if they don't believe in what you believe in, get rid of them and get someone that actually believes in what you believe in. I get it. Makes sense.
Successor, who always appeared loyally by his side in photos and propaganda posters, died under mysterious circumstances when his plane crashed as he was fleeing to the Soviet Union.
I'm not accusing anybody, but
Mao later denounced him as a traitor.
there you go.
He denounced Xi's father too. This is a photo of Xi Sr. being restrained and publicly criticized by the Red Guards at the height of the Cultural Revolution. He would remain a prisoner in Beijing for 8 years.
Oh no.
With his father purged, Xi Jinping, 15 at the time, was expelled from his elite school in Beijing and sent to work in the countryside.
Oof.
He had to live in a cave and, do hard manual labor. His food was barely enough for, a growing young person.
Damn.
And Chairman Mao was responsible for all of it.
Yeah, I'd be pissed.
Then Mao died. The Cultural Revolution ended. His successor was Deng Xiaoping, one of the Politburo Standing Committee members who was removed from power during the Cultural Revolution, who, just before Mao died, started making a promise to fellow exiled party veterans.
Deng Xiaoping signaled credibly to all the surviving Long Marchers that he wanted to rehabilitate people. So when Mao died, they all supported the rehabilitation of Deng. And as soon as Deng was rehabilitated, he went ahead and rehabilitated all these people.
With experienced
W
leadership
guy.
back in place, the party needed to figure out how to prevent something like this from ever happening again. In order to
It's crazy because I always imagine Xi Jinping as like, obviously he's Mao's successor and whatnot in a way, but I always imagine him to have like the same ideology, the same outtake, the same outlook, and like a similar approach to things. But the more this goes on, the more that's proving to not be the case.
To undo Mao's cult of personality, the party introduced a second historical resolution in 1981. It condemned periods of Mao's rule and emphasized a renewed commitment to collective leadership, vowing to oppose the consolidation of power around one person moving forward.
No, did not work out, mate.
Successors to Mao didn't want a dictatorship, so they divided up these positions and put them in the hands of different people.
Like Mao, Deng kept tight control over the Central Military Commission as its chairman, and held a leadership position in the government, but was never head of state.
Clever.
He never held the highest position in the party either.
Headache.
Instead, he set up a new advisory commission and served as its chairman, which allowed him to influence the party's direction without positioning himself directly on top of it. This allowed a power-sharing structure while still making Deng the de facto leader of China until he stepped down in 1989, following the army's massacre of students protesting in Tiananmen Square.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Protesters suddenly ran into the middle of the street and in front of the oncoming tanks.
Anger at Deng Xiaoping, the entire Chinese government, it had the real feeling of rebellion in the streets of Beijing.
People want to fight the military out of their city.
Deng and his ideology, which moved away from Maoism, set a precedent of sharing power. He opened up China and established economic ties with these countries, and was the first PRC leader to visit the U.S. in 1979.
Today we take another step in the
Hey, your boy Jimmy.
normalization of relations which we have begun this year.
Deng's reforms became the foundation for decades of economic prosperity
Damn.
that led China to having the world's reforms became the foundation for decades of economic prosperity.
Bro went from 0 to 16 billion in how many years? 40 years. Trillion. Oh my god. Trillion. In constant 2015 US. Bro. Crazy. Not him. I mean the country, you know.
That led China to having the world's second largest economy over time.
But still,
and being on
he,
the
you know,
verge of becoming the world's next superpower.
He set them off on the path.
Communism is creating a consumer society.
It also reminds you that the standard of living in China is going up. Here, capitalism rules.
Does it?
One thing power sharing did lead to was a lot of policy innovation and then some degree of decentralization, and both of these things helped China's economy enormously.
Which is why this period of economic growth and reform, stretching over roughly 30 years, is known as the Deng era. And whether he wanted to or not, Deng kept his word and never tried to consolidate absolute power around himself.
Fair enough.
He did end up sharing power, and that set the stage for power sharing in the party until the rise of Xi Jinping.
So what was Xi doing all this time?
That's it, he said it. Roll credits.
When Mao died in 1976, Xi was back in Beijing studying communist philosophy. Even though the Chinese Communist Party had ruined Xi's family, he had joined it, just as the Cultural Revolution was winding down.
Damn.
But why?
Personally, he might begrudge Chairman Mao for doing all these terrible things to his family, but I think at this time he also recognized that in the system of the Chinese Communist Party, power is everything. Without power, you're nothing.
But in order to get...
That's the way anywhere in the world, right? Without power, you're nothing. You can't get anything done. Nobody listens to you. No one takes you seriously. I mean, especially if somebody ruined your whole country and your family. I mean, I guess he could have good intentions and go and try and fix it. I mean, it's going well. Nobody, like, there's no crazy famine in China that I hear of unless I'm living under a rock. Do you know what I mean? So...
get that power, Xi did something unexpected.
A good job.
He left Beijing.
As his competitors were fiercely competing with each other in the 1980s and 1990s, he sort of got out of their way and went to the provinces.
He took positions in party leadership in rural, poor provinces all around China, where there were no other princelings to compete with. First in Hebei, a poor rural province outside of Beijing, where he easily reached the top spot as party secretary. Then in Fujian, a heavily militarized region where top members of the army were stationed. He moved up the ranks to party secretary here too, before becoming the governor of the province a few years later.
Working your way up.
After making powerful friends in the military, Xi went here, where he once again assumed the office of party secretary and grew his support on the civilian side.
Wait, so he's a recent development in China's... Well, not recent development, but like he didn't come into power. For some reason, I assumed Xi Jinping came into power in like 1990, 1980, but in 2002, if he's still trying to work his way up... Wow.
This strategy of moving around didn't just give Xi a leg up in areas where competition was slim, it also gave him credibility as a humble, hardworking party leader, and he cultivated a growing group of supporters who would come back into play years down the line. It was his last stop, and his shortest one, that ultimately got him back to Beijing. A brief stint in the top party spot in Shanghai in 2007, where he rehabilitated the city's image following a high-level corruption scandal. Xi developed a reputation here as a prudent leader who towed the party line. Just 7 months later, he finally returned to Beijing.
Bro did not grow that much in 7 months. Bro, you telling me he got grey hairs in 7 months?
Line. Just 7 months later, the
How many years was it since
a brief stint
2002?
in the top
Okay.
party spot in Shanghai in
5 years later.
2007, where he rehabilitated the city's image following a high-level corruption scandal. Xi developed a reputation here as a prudent leader who towed the party line. Just 7 months later, he finally returned to Beijing, having been promoted to the all-powerful Politburo Standing Committee.
Do I recognize any of these guys? No.
Basically, the people who were
Hu Jintao actually rings a bell.
on top leadership at the time, they wanted a princeling, but they didn't want a princeling who was too ambitious or too strong. So Xi Jinping, he was seen as less ambitious because he was willing to go to the countryside and work in lower level positions.
When Xi emerged at the 2007 National Congress and leadership unveiling, he was one of the 9 most powerful men in the country. It was at this moment that his strategic climb, over 17 long years in the countryside, paid off. Big time.
Long game.
When the General Secretary stepped down in 2012, Xi emerged at the top spot in the party as China's leader.
2012? Bro, wow. Is me assuming he's been there way longer than before?
Now, the elite son of a former revolutionary,
way longer than that,
turned
rather,
exiled peasant, turned party darling, was poised to seize control of everything. Like Mao, Xi Jinping believes that rallying around a single figure is crucial to the party's survival, rather than the collective leadership Deng's reforms had normalized. So pretty much as soon as Xi Jinping came to power, he started getting rid of people.
The news 4 top officials removed for taking bribes was announced on state TV.
Oh, he had a reason.
Just sacked his foreign minister.
Fair enough.
Just sacked his defense minister. He sacked a whole lot of other people at the top of
Oh,
the
no.
military establishment.
The former security czar has not been seen in public for more than a year.
Oh, no.
The investigation against Xu allows the Chinese president to remove those opposed to his reforms.
He launched a major anti-corruption
He's just getting rid of him.
as soon as he took power in late 2012, early 13, which led to the arrest of hundreds of senior level officials,
my
as well as
God.
military officers.
These purges targeted Xi's rivals in the party, whose vacant positions he filled with his own supporters.
Bro came in and started
After this
clapping
massive
people
purge,
off.
Xi Jinping was in very tight control over both the party and also the Chinese
Look at my man smiling over here. Please let me live.
military, thereby making him the most powerful leader of the Chinese Communist Party since the death of Mao.
That pattern continued in the second term, where he unveiled 5 new faces of the Politburo Standing Committee, 3 of them with close personal ties to Xi. In 2021, Xi pulled off one of his most dramatic acts yet.
Getting a 3rd term.
To enforce his influence over the Chinese Communist Party. He introduced a 3rd historic resolution that unified the party's ideology around one clear line of thinking. Xi Jinping thought.
There you go.
Xi's personal political ideology would now be the core in the party's thinking,
Yes.
political stance, and action. Basically, Xi Jinping's ideas could no longer be challenged.
My guy is literally... Oh, we seen it in the video earlier as well in that newspaper. Mao 2.0, where is it? It was here somewhere. There, right there. Mao 2.0. Oh my God. Literally.
And they weren't for many years. During Xi's first 10 years in power, the size of China's economy more than doubled.
Go back. Oh my God.
During Xi's first 10 years in power, the size of China's economy more than doubled.
Oh my days. Call it about 8. Call it... Oh my God, 17? 18?
So did average individual income. So did military spending.
Damn.
Under his leadership, China's presence on the world stage has grown too, positioning the rising superpower to take on the role of an aggressor externally, reasserting claims over parts of the South China Sea, intimidating Taiwan and Tibet, and stripping democratic process in Hong Kong.
Yep.
Inside its own borders, strict internet censorship and surveillance are widespread. And oppression of Uyghurs, a mostly minority Muslim ethnic group, is marked by human rights abuses.
A lot of people deny that, and to be honest, it would be improper of me to not bring attention to it. Had I made the video and had it not been mentioned, etc., etc., I would have had to mention it. Obviously, killing is wrong. we can all agree killing is wrong. I'm not going to make this a virtue signaling section of the video, but, you know, as much as I enjoy seeing people's rises to power, it doesn't mean I idolize them or like them. Yeah.
But it wasn't until COVID that Xi saw the first real challenge to his authority.
Anger in China is growing.
Video showing protesters in Xinjiang fed up with China's zero COVID rules. The boldest public challenge yet.
Whole lot of people about to disappear.
With these protests all around the country and the party's reputation in peril, Xi reversed the failed policy, but is now faced with a shaky economy and cracks in his unchecked authority.
Damn.
It was just weeks before the widespread protests at the 20th National Congress in 2022 that Xi walked out in the leading position a third time. He'd already locked in the presidency for another 5 years.
Bro's locked in.
And unveiled a Politburo standing committee completely packed with those loyal to him, after removing the final senior members of the party that had ties to his predecessor. Now, there is no one left in party or military leadership whose ideology differs from Xi.
Clever.
I don't think anyone can push him out at
Clever.
this point. I think he will be
No, they can't.
Most powerful
Of
leader
course
in
not.
China as long as he's alive and conscious.
What? He'll be the most powerful leader as long as he's alive, of course.
The most powerful leader in China.
Obviously.
As long as he's alive.
100 million %.
And conscious.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Atlas. So many teammates worked on this piece. A small army of editors, animators, and researchers helped bring this complicated story into focus. I'd especially like to shout out Raja, one of the key researchers on this piece, who conducted an incredible interview with our expert, Victor Xi. It takes a lot of resources to make these videos, but we publish our work free to watch here because we think journalism should be accessible to everyone. If you believe in keeping journalism free and want to support our continuing work, go to vox.com/give now to make a contribution. Thanks again.
That was a good video. I enjoyed it. It was quite concise. It didn't go too crazy into detail, of course, but, you know, we're not here to learn about the history of China. We're here to learn about Xi Jinping. But no, that was good, man. I enjoyed it. I'll link the video in the description anyway. If you liked it, please comment, like, share, subscribe. If you didn't like it, hit dislike. Safe?